Good morning on this Sunday, November 14th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Georgia lawmakers vote on new state and House and Senate districts. Democrats say these new maps do not represent Georgia's changing population. Also, Atlanta mayoral candidates Felicia Moore and Andre Dickens face off as they look toward their runoff. And remembering former Senator and VA Administrator Max Cleland, who passed away this week at the age of 79. Phil, Theron, Martha, and Bobby are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Georgia lawmakers will work on new congressional maps this week after redrawing their own districts. Democrats say the maps do not represent the Georgia of today.
The map before us does not represent the Georgia of today. This map does not see Georgia for who we have become.
Democrats in the state Senate did not hold back on the newly drawn maps that passed along party lines. Georgia's population has grown by 1 million people over the last decade, fueled by an increase in minority residents. Democrats say that means there should be more majority-minority districts.
This map takes Republicans in the districts we have, which right now are 34 out of the 36, takes our own numbers down to 33.
Republicans defended the new boundaries as Democrats vowed the fight is far from over.
Isn't it true that we have determined that when you target women leaders, that you are targeting all women in Georgia?
Agreed.
And furthermore, isn't it true that when you come after women, women will come after you in the ballot box?
I agree with that statement wholeheartedly.
Over on the Health side, residents of Dunwoody and Coweta County showed up to protest the House map. And Phil, let's try to get into some of the weeds on this redistricting process. Some accuse Speaker Ralston of political payback in that Coweta County area because State Rep Philip Singleton has been an outspoken critic of the Speaker, and Singleton's newly drawn district will be difficult for him to win re-election. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me address the first point, and I have to always laugh and shake my head when the Democrats have this sanctimonious complaining about they're being cheated and all of this. The last time the Democrats were in power and Governor Roy Barnes, the last Democrat governor, was in power, they cut up all sorts of districts. They stabbed Republicans in the back when they could. They stretched things out, and it was ruled unconstitutional by the courts. The Republicans have been very careful. And when it comes to black majority districts, under the Voting Rights Act, you have to be very careful and not disturb those. They followed those rules. They followed the way it was done 10 years ago when even the Obama Justice Department approved those lines. So there's a lot of complaining naturally. These are partisan redistricting, that's true, but the U.S. Supreme Court has said whoever's in power in the state legislature gets to redistrict, and you can redistrict it with the hope of partisan gain. As to the Philip Singleton issue, who, of course, as you say, is a representative there, and Coweta County was split up. And as we tape, we don't see the final maps. But this was a Republican who disagreed with the Speaker on various issues, and that's politics. In politics, when you live by the sword, you can die by the sword.
Theron, redistricting is a sticky process, and as Speaker Ralston said, not everyone will be happy.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and I think the Speaker understands that. And the one thing I want to do, Lori, is just really kind of push back on Phil, because as he is right, you know, when the party who's in power, they definitely try to do two things. One, they want to protect their caucus members, but also look at ways to actually increase their caucus members as well by figuring out seats that they can maybe, you know, without gerrymandering and literally just trying to, you know, draw people out of their districts, but look at ways based on growth to pick up more caucus members. But the difference this time, Lori, is what you heard the state senators and the state representatives say, is that we are a 50-50 state now. We are a blue state, and some Republicans still think we're more of a purple state. They can't call us a red state anymore because we just delivered Joe Biden a victory here and we elected 2 U.S. senators. And so I think the risk for Republicans, and I've said this before and our viewers have heard me say this, is that they had an opportunity here to basically be fair, to not sort of continue to be labeled as a party that tries to divide the state. And I think there's still time, but these maps, you just saw an uproar from the Democrats, and not one Democrat voted for any of these maps. So this truly was a partisan vote. And so I will say this as I close, I think that the maps that we see now probably won't be the final version, but we'll be caught up in legal battles on this for many, many months to come.
Martha, I see you shaking your head and smiling, but Democrats in the Senate say that the map does not represent Georgia. Do they have a valid point?
No, I don't think so, because these are maps reflecting state House seats and state Senate seats, which are still majority Republican. We may have delivered a victory to Joe Biden in 2020, but the victory went to the Republicans as far as the state House and the state legislature is concerned. So they are drawing these lines to reflect that. And for anybody to be surprised that politics is played in redistricting means that they haven't been around for very long.
Bobby, Republicans on the Senate side say that the map will lessen the number for Republicans. So why complain?
Well, I think an easy way to start to answer that question is we can all agree that in 2020, this was at best case scenario for Republicans, a 50-50 state. Yet the imbalance in the state Senate as it is drawn today and will be drawn again in the future is 34 senators or 33 if they go down to 20 that are Republican to 23 or 24 who are Democrat. Now, that is a huge difference and a huge spread between where we are in reality as a state. Now, I agree with Martha and I agree with Phil that these are issues that are decided in the state legislatures, and to the victor goes the spoils in a lot of these cases. But you got to give credit to folks in the Democratic Party like Senator Elena Parent, who had said even before this last state house election that we should have fair districts that are 50-50, allow for less gerrymandering. These are Democrats that were on board with this before even the election. I've seen absolutely none of that, unfortunately, by Republicans.
All right, I want to move on because we'll be talking about redistricting again next week. Newsweek had an interesting article about Stacey Abrams that quoted an anonymous advisor who basically said she has plans to run for governor in 2022, then run for president in 2024. Now, if Biden does not, for 2028 if he does. So, Theron, that's probably not the quote that Stacey Abrams wanted to see if she's planning to run for governor, because the Kemp campaign was just all over that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it was very interesting. That article definitely left a lot of people sort of confused. But I think you saw quickly the Abrams spokesperson come out in the article stated this, Lori, that was not, her plans. Like, she's basically taking more time to think about her future, and we should give her that time, right? But also earlier in the week, the Jolt Patricia Murphy wrote a very interesting column about Michael Thurmond and his sort of plan that if Stacey were not to run, I think he solidified the position as a viable alternative. And so last week you heard me sort of say, hey, by December 1st, we need to have someone. And so while we still wait to see what Stacey Abrams is going to do, I do believe now we have a viable alternative and a candidate that if she chooses not to run, that person should be Michael Thurmond.
Well, Phil, there's still a lot of chatter on whether former Senator Perdue will challenge Governor Kemp in the Republican primary. You said last week you think he will. Is that still your view this week?
Yes, I think you will see a green light soon for Senator Perdue to enter the Republican gubernatorial primary that'll be held in May. And I think that he would probably get the Trump endorsement, which would help. And I will have to talk about this blue state, purple state, red state thing. All the pundits and Democrats thought Virginia was a blue state. Oh, the Republicans would never win. Well, wait a minute. That went red. And that doesn't mean Georgia is a blue state, Theron. I'm sorry. The way Joe Biden is recklessly doing spending and having open borders and raging inflation, et cetera, I think Georgia is ready to go back to the Republicans next year. So if Stacey Abrams runs, and I don't think so, whoever's the Democratic nominee for governor is going to be facing some strong headwinds.
Martha, I got about 15 seconds. You have your hand up.
Well, I mentioned several weeks ago that I wasn't worried about Stacey Abrams. I was more worried about Michael Thurmond as a Republican. And I think Stacey Abrams is hurting herself, and she's hurting the Georgia Democratic Party. You might be able to give her the time to decide, but it seems like she's had enough time.
All right, everybody, thank you. Coming up, we focus on the city of Atlanta as Felicia Moore and Andre Dickens continue on the campaign trail heading toward the runoff election.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Atlanta mayoral candidates Andre Dickens and Felicia Moore are back out on the campaign trail, holding news conferences and attending forums. Bobby, I want to start with you this block. Let's talk about the strategy here. Felicia Moore got 40% of the vote. What does Andre Dickens have to do to finish in first place in the runoff?
Well, he's got to get his message out there, and he's got to defend himself from any attack that could come on the defund the police front. And I think he could be able to do that if he's able to get on television and deliver what his talking points are, which is that he is for a stronger city with a balanced policing. For Felicia Moore, I think she needs to keep doing more of the same. She needs to keep pressing her message and to continue turning out her people. When you get 40% plus in a first round of a runoff, it's a decent, not always predictive indicator that you would have a better shot in a head-to-head. But you got to remember that there was a huge contingent here that was voting against Kasim Reed, and those votes were being split between Felicia Moore and Andre Dickens. So where they go now becomes the big question. You're trying to target them.
Phil, where do they go now, and what does Felicia Moore have to do to stay on top?
Well, there's just a little time left. As you know, November 30th is the runoff date, and I think that crime, again, is going to be the huge issue. I think that Bobby mentioned the defund the police position of Andre Dickens. You know, he stabbed police in the back, and a lot of people in Atlanta, especially the law enforcement community, isn't forgetting that. That was just a stupid vote, and I know he hopefully regrets it, but he hasn't really recovered from that. And of course, Felicia Moore had heavy vote up in North Atlanta. I think they'll be coming out because she wants the jail opened in the city. She wants more police, et cetera, et cetera. So I think she'll retain the edge in the runoff.
I want to move on to another topic because I want to focus on the Ahmaud Arbery trial. Theron, I think many people were surprised about the makeup of the jury, 11 white jurors and 1 African American. Your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, Lori, that was a lot of talk last week, and I'm so happy we're having an opportunity to talk about it on this show, so thank you for that. You know, it's problematic when you have the makeup of the jury that we see, and then also, you know, we can't forget that an innocent black man was shot and killed while jogging in Brunswick. And so, you know, it's been a lot of talk from the defense attorney, you know, criticizing whether or not Reverend Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson should be allowed in the courtroom. And I just want us not to get distracted from just basically the facts. And I think that the prosecution is trying to really do their best to present the facts. And of course, these 3 men have the right to defend themselves. But, you know, there was 2 months that this case was just unsolved. I mean, that's the one thing that's coming out in this case. And there was interviews, but it wasn't until the video surfaced. And had we not had that video, Lori, I don't even think we'll be having this trial to talk about the death of Ahmaud Arbery. So it's very sad that, you know, we're having to sort of go through this, but ultimately I think that justice will prevail and we'll get justice for Ahmaud Arbery and his family.
We sure hope so. Martha, what do you think of the testimony that we've heard so far?
Well, I tell you, I was also concerned about the jury makeup, and if you look in kind of in detail and how the strikes were used and that kind of thing, I mean, there are some questions there. But I think that the prosecution so far is making their case, and you certainly, you know, you see the town of Brunswick that before Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson got involved, that they were having almost daily prayer vigils that were peaceful and were united and were multiracial almost every day in that courthouse, and it was almost no coverage at the peaceful way that they dealt with things in Brunswick. So I'm looking for justice to be done, and I want due process to be followed, and he did not get that at the beginning of this in the first 2 months, so hopefully he will get it now.
Well, moving on, Stonecrest Mayor Jason Larry in federal court this week accused of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars in COVID relief money that was meant for the city. Phil, these are some pretty serious charges.
Well, they are, and Larry is just a walking political train wreck, and of course it's been so divisive with his relationship with his city council. And so again, just to kind of echo what we all hope goes on, due process will be followed, but I think his boat is sinking.
Theron, what do you make of all of this and this money that was supposed to be for the city of Stonecrest?
Yeah, it's just really unfortunate. I mean, we've heard for months now that there was some talk about misuse of money, and clearly, I mean, to be charged with 3 federal offenses is serious. Phil is going to chuckle when I say this, but you know, don't rush to judgment here. And shout out to our good friend Reg, who always calls me out when I say that. But I think in this case, it's really unfortunate because this is money that was given to the state, to the counties, and to the city to help people recover from this deadly pandemic. And so it's just the optics are not good. It's really bad for a city that is trying to do the right thing, and the mayor's definitely got some tough questions to answer.
And Martha, how does City Council deal with this, and what about the money here that we're talking about?
Well, I mean, this may be one of the first cases we've heard about, but it will not be the last. And I'm talking across the country because there was so much money thrown at this problem. We're seeing in school systems where they're going to be asking for an extension on how much time they have to spend the money they got through CARES and other programs because so much money is out there. And when you throw a lot of money around without a lot of restrictions on it or restrictions that people can get around, you're going to have this kind of problem. So the City Council needs to act. He deserves due process too, but this is a problem, and this will not be the last time we see this problem.
I imagine we'll be hearing from a lot of whistleblowers. Thank you. Coming up, a Republican lawmaker wants to expand the Gwinnett County Commission. We'll discuss after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Republican State Senator Clint Dixon introduced a bill that could drastically change representation in Gwinnett County. If approved, the commission would go from 4 commissioners to 9, plus a chairperson. Bobby, I want to start with you and get your thoughts on this.
Well, this is just another example. We talked about the redistricting earlier being partisan, and here is another way to do it at the local level, at the county commission level, and you're seeing it firsthand. This is what happens when you allow lawmakers to choose their voters instead of voters to choose their lawmakers. It should never be this way, and this is why everybody should be for independent redistricting commissions on the state level. And then on these commission levels, you should not be allowed to pass something like this on a party line vote, which this passed 4-3. This should have to be a unanimous vote in order to expand something like this so that everybody would be on board, or at least 2/3.
Phil?
Well, I never heard the Democrats complain about it when they did the same type of map drawing. But I will say this, Gwinnett County is going to be a Democratic county. I don't see anything drastic, even if it's expanded. I think that Nicole Hendrickson, the chairwoman of Gwinnett County Commission, will still have a lot of power. And incidentally, I think she's been doing a good job, with bridging the two parties and moving Gwinnett forward. But there are Republicans, Bobby, in Gwinnett County, and they deserve some districts. I will say this. I think that Senator Dixon and others should have informed Chairwoman Hendrickson and some of the others that this is what's going to happen, and there should be a debate about it.
Theron, to Phil's point, a lot of Democrats were complaining because they say they were never even contacted about this bill and had no input.
Well, some Republicans, Lori, were not contacted as well, and so I think that therein lies the challenge for this: is that if State Representative Dixon decided to say this is something he wanted to do, the first thing you got to do, you got to call Sam Park, who's the delegation chair, right, and just say, hey, this is something I'm very passionate about. I want to have a conversation. And so there was no communications with the chairwoman, who pushed back very aggressively and said that this is crazy because there's similar structures in Cobb and Fulton that works very well. And I'm glad to hear that Phil complimented Chairwoman Hendrickson because she's working very, very hard to really unite a county that is very diverse. And so ultimately, to Bobby's point, this is just something that was blatantly done to try to sort of plant a seed, and I think it's not over. I think while it probably won't pick up a lot of steam during this special session, the question is, will Gwinnett County be prepared in January? And also, would he propose to do with the school board? The chairman, Everton Blair, said no one ever contacted him. They proactively in October took a vote to say, hey, let's look at reapportionment. Let's look at some things that we can do differently. But to just go introduce this bill without any type of communications to the people that it's directly going to affect, he deserves all the criticism that he's receiving right now.
All right, I want to move on because I want to run the table on this next story. This week, as we honored veterans across Georgia and the nation, well, we lost a true American hero. Former Senator Max Cleland, who also headed up the Veterans Administration, died at the age of 79. I want to really go to everybody here and get everybody's thoughts on the man who served our country and our state of Georgia. Theron, I'll start with you.
Senator Max Cleland is an American hero. I mean, you just laid it out, Lori. I mean, there was nobody in Georgia that fought harder for veterans' rights than Max Cleland. He's former Secretary of State, you know, and so we're going to miss him. I mean, this is a man who lost limbs fighting for our country, and so this is a very unfortunate loss for our state, but ultimately I just want to thank him for his service.
Phil, I can remember the time when he lost the Senate race to Senator Saxby Chambliss. It was a tough loss, one that really hit him personally.
That's right. In 1996, he lost to Saxby Chambliss, the U.S. Senate seat, and they both played hardball. They knew how the game was played. I have to agree with some of Theron's comments. He was a man that persevered. He kept a great attitude in spite of his injuries. As a veteran, we got along fine, and I think that we're losing some of that. We always had some spirited debates among each other, but we always stayed friendly, and I always liked that about Max Cleland. And he was a great head of the Veterans Administration because he knew a lot of what needed to be done.
And Martha, I think, you know, after covering him for so many years, I want to say that even when he didn't have a title, Senator Max Cleland was all over the place. He was in Georgia, he was at the Capitol. He never really missed an event to be at.
Well, if you're of a certain age, you have something that is signed by Max Cleland, Secretary of State, if you went on one of those Capitol field trips and that kind of thing. He was also that guy that started the move for motor voter across the country and that kind of innovation that happened. He was pleasant. We didn't agree on a lot of issues, but we always told a good story and had a laugh. And he enjoyed being on my program, and I enjoyed having him on. So, you know, he will be missed, and he gave a great sacrifice, not only for this country, but for Georgia. And, you know, rest in peace, Max Cleland.
Absolutely. Bobby?
Yeah, I mean, this guy is the best Georgia has to offer. He truly is an American hero. He's a patriot. He's all those things. He had a big heart, and he really wanted to stay involved even after he was bounced from the Senate in that crazy election. You know, when I was running for Congress many years ago, I spoke with Senator Cleland on numerous occasions and got his endorsement. But putting that aside, the fact that he was interested and willing to take calls and meetings with young up-and-comers like me just speaks volumes about it. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do any of that. He got involved. He did everything he could to help us, even with his, you know, his limabilities through his injuries. But he's just someone we're all going to miss.
Absolutely. Nice sentiments, everybody. Thank you. Coming up, we'll have winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, everyone, you know I like to give my time cues until we can get back into the studio, hopefully very soon. We got about 3.5 minutes. Bobby, we'll start with you.
I'll just say one more thing about Senator Cleland, which is, as a winner this week, check out Patricia Murphy's column on it. She writes a great tribute. If you want to know who this guy is, read about it if you don't know. Secondly, I just want to pay a tribute and make a winner to not only all the veterans who have served and are serving this country, but all of their spouses and families who bear the brunt of a lot of that back home. It's a lot of single parenting, so I want to say a shout out to them. And then for the losers, I'd like to make the folks who are infecting school boards across the state of Georgia with the anti-vax policies. The fact that we all have to deal with this at a school level, it's just not productive and it's ridiculous.
All right, Martha, over to you.
Well, my winner this week, my husband, Lynn Zoller's birthday is today, so I'm going to say happy birthday to him. Also, I want to remember again Senator Max Cleland. He was always a lot of fun. We did a lot of great interviews this week of people that knew him, and so you can listen to those. And then I guess my loser this week is just the people that just won't let the process play out. You know, everybody feels like they've got to announce things and have an opinion from the first minute, and I know we do too, but sometimes we need to let things play out and it'll work out better.
All right, happy birthday to your husband. I know he's watching. Phil, over to you. We got about 2 minutes.
I'd like to make my winner businessman Sachin Shailendra. He's the chairman of the University System Board of Regents that oversees all the 26 colleges and universities in the state. He's finishing his second term, and he'll be turning over the reins in January. And I just want to say he led the system through a tough 2 years where we had the COVID period. He did stress, to his great credit, in-person learning along with the virtual learning. And he did, along with the regents, bring in that excellent reform post-tenure review. And also, I want to make the winner the Olympic Centennial Park ceremony and Richard Jewell, the late Richard Jewell. I'm glad they're memorializing him as a hero who saved a lot of lives when he discovered what happened with the bombing in that park in 1996.
Great. No loser this week, Phil?
No loser.
That's a first. All right, Theron, over to you. We got about a minute.
Okay. Phil, I agree with you for once that Chairman Sachin Shailendra is a good man. I had breakfast with him this week, and I knew you were going to make him a winner, so I agree with you on that, all the great work that he's done. Also, I want to make my Clark Central Gladiators football team a winner this week, Lori. They are regional champs again, and as we tape, they're going to be going into the playoffs, and so I think we're going to be competing for a state championship this year. And then also go Dogs. And then lastly, my winner is the Georgia Association of Broadcasters. They had a Hall of Fame event a few weeks ago. It was too many inductees to name. You all know who you are, but definitely want to congratulate all of them for the outstanding work in broadcasting.
Awesome. A lot of winners this week and not very many losers, so that's a good way to end a week. Thank you, guys. And thank you so much for watching. We will see you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.